Welcome back everyone. In today's video, we're going to talk about setting up the Fractal FM3 in 4 cable method with a real amplifier. We're going to be using the Tone Molecular, one of my favorite tube amps ever. Let's do it. In this video, I want to demonstrate two use cases, one using the FM3 for effects only, and the other using the FM3 amp modeling as a preamp into the effects return, so utilizing the Tone just as a tube power amp, because we have independent outputs and inputs, input 1 and 2, and output 1 and 2 on the FM3. We actually can just leave it set up in 4 cable method and use 2 different presets to access all of that kind of stuff. So let's take a look at the 2 presets, then I'll show you how to plug everything in, and then the fun part, we'll actually hear it. Let's begin by cabling everything. We're going to take a standard instrument cable from our guitar to input 1 on the FM3. Using another instrument cable, we're going to go from the effects send, or output 2 on the FM3, to the front panel input on our amplifier. We're then going to take our amplifier's effects send and connect that to input number 2 on our FM3. Again, you can use a standard instrument cable for this. Finally, we're going to use an XLR to TRS cable and plug our output 1 on the FM3 to the effects return on our amp. And we're done cabling. Next, we want to set up our input and output levels. Press the E encoder from the home screen, and you can go to the setup menu. We're going to go to the I/O menu and scroll down. The first thing we're going to do is set input 2 mode to be left only, because I've connected my amp effects send to the left input on my FM3. We're running in mono at the moment. Then I'm going to set my output 1 configuration to be left plus right sum, again because we're running in mono. You were sending this to another power amp as a slave. You could use stereo and have stereo time-based effects, which is pretty fun. The output level from output number 1, I found setting to -10 worked best with my amp, but experiment with this. Finally, output 2 configuration we're going to set as sum left plus right. I haven't used the boost or the pad, and I've left the phase as normal. So pretty straightforward stuff there. Finally, the 2 level controls on the top of the FM3, I've turned output 2 all the way up, and I just adjusted output 1 to where I was getting enough signal to my power amp's return. Again, adjust that one to taste. Let's take a look at how I've got these presets set up. Essentially, I'm using some effects before my amplifier and in my amplifier's effects loop. Normally, I would place things like drives, EQs, boosts, compressors, and I like my phaser before the amp, so I've used a phaser in here, the Script 90 type, as well as a graphic EQ as a preamp boost. So signal will be flowing from my guitar through input 1 through the phaser and graphic EQ, and then being sent to the front end of my amplifier. Then in the effects loop, I've got a delay and a reverb, so they're coming from my amp's effects loop, going through the delay and reverb, and coming out of output 1 back to my amp's effects return. And the way I have organized everything in here is using the FM3's scene feature. So scene 1, there's no effects. Scene 2 is going to activate the reverb. Scene 3 is going to activate the graphic EQ and the delay. And scene 4 is going to activate the phaser and the delay. The second preset I'm using is almost exactly the same idea. I've made 2 little tweaks. I'm setting this one up so that I can actually bypass the Tone's preamp and use an amp model from the FM3. In this case, I've chosen the Dirty Shirley model. And because I just want to use this as a preamp, I'm going to go to the power supply section here. I'm going to set the supply sag to off. This disables the FM3's power amp emulation for this particular preset, which is great. So I'm just using this as a preamp. And rather than have input 2 and output 2, I'm using the internal send and return jacks to route my signal from this block down here. So in this particular preset, we're not using the Tone's preamp. The amplifier sound is actually coming from the FM3 along with the effects. Let's hear it now. Now for the fun part, we can hear it all. Let's start with preset A, which is using the Tone for all the amp tones and the FM3 for effects only. Foot switch 1, I've got set up to access scene 1 and 2 via tap and hold. Similarly, foot switch 2 is accessing scenes 3 and 4, and then foot switch 3 I've got as my tap tempo, and if I hold it, I get the tuner, so I can line up my delays in this preset. Let's start with scene 1, so the tap function of foot switch 1. This is going to give me just the dry amp sound. It sounds like this. So some juicy modified Marshall goodness. If I hold this foot switch, I'm going to get scene 2, which engages the London plate reverb. So it just kind of gives it a little bit of space there. If I tap foot switch 2, I'm going to get scene 3. So this engages a graphic EQ as a boost in front of the amp, as well as engaging the Memory Man style delay. This is glorious. And then scene 4, the hold function for foot switch 2 is going to swap channels on the delay. So I'm going to have a dotted eighth delay with way more mix, and I'm also going to have a phaser, and this will all sync up to tap tempo like this. Pretty cool stuff. Now this amp is basically a single channel amp. It doesn't have a clean channel per se. So if I move over to preset B, I'm using the FM3 Dirty Shirley model as a preamp. So I'm actually just bypassing the Cherrytones preamp. I haven't had to recable anything. I've just moved over to this other preset where I've reassigned the input and output blocks. And now I've got a kind of pretty sweet edge of breakup, dirty-ish clean. And then I've arranged the foot switches and the scenes basically as I did on preset A. So a little bit of reverb on scene 2. Scene 3 is actually going to engage the Tone of Kings overdrive and the same delay on preset A. And similarly, scene 4 is going to give me a phaser and a delay. So it's pretty lovely having both of those options there. You don't have to recable anything. The advantage of having independent input and output blocks means that, yeah, on 2 different presets, you can have one set up to actually use the amplifier's preamp, twist knobs, do all the kind of things you like to do with an amp. But then if you want to access all the different amp models in the FM3, for example, adding a genuine kind of clean channel to your single channel amp, you can do that, or you could delve in there and use something like a Messer Mark series, running it into the power amp of the Cherrytone. So hopefully that gives you just a couple of ideas of what you can do in 4-cable method with the FM3 and a tube amplifier. If you have any other questions regarding the setup or what you could do with scenes, again, very, very basic example. I didn't use a lot of effects in this. You can have up to 8 scenes per preset in the FM3, and using the tap and hold function and the layouts and the views, there's a lot of options that you can get out of this little guy with 3 foot switches. So I would love to hear from you guys. What do you think about this? Is this how you're planning on using your FM3? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.